Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I share with you a mega plant haul. So let's go. I am so excited to make this video and I couldn't wait to make it for all of you so that I could show you all the wonderful plants that I was able to get as part of this plant haul. Now, I've seen videos on plant hauls where you can go and get plants marked down on sale, on clearance, but you can't beat free. And as you know, I am all about gardening on a budget. And I love making videos showing how you can also garden on a budget. And I mean, look at all the beauty surrounding me. This is just amazing. I am so fortunate. I'm so lucky to get these plants for free. And I wanted to share with you how I got these plants and my interaction with the nice property owner when it came to digging out these plants. So I was on my computer last night and I was perusing Facebook Marketplace, which I know a lot of you do as well, because you can find some great garden finds out there. And lo and behold, there was an ad on there that said free perennials. So of course I clicked on it and it had just been posted 15 minutes prior to me seeing that advertisement. And so I looked up where it was. It was about 40 minutes from my house. And it just happened to be that my husband was headed up in that same direction this morning for an appointment. And I figured I might as well join him and try to get some free plants while I'm at it. So I wrote the person. She was awfully sweet, awfully nice. And I went up there this morning, literally 12 hours after writing her. And what a wonderful woman. She opened up her yard to allow people to come in and dig some perennials that she either didn't want or that she was thinning out. And honestly, I think that's a great way for someone to thin out their garden. It's a lot of manual labor. And if you don't have the time or it's too much work for you to go through that manual labor, it's a great option to put a posting or a listing out on Facebook Marketplace, basically opening up your garden and letting people know that they can dig in certain sections of their yard. And it's really up to the property owner to oversee the process and make sure that all their perennials aren't being dug out, only the ones that they want to thin out or remove. She had one person show up last night. It must have been very shortly after she posted the listing. And then I showed up this morning as well as another nice lady. And then after I was leaving, someone else showed up. Well, the property owner had taken down the listing, pretty quickly this morning because of course, she was getting a lot of interest in her advertisement. So I wanted to basically talk a little bit about the process and things to think about if you also are going to go to someone else's property and they're allowing you to dig up some of their plants. When it comes to what did I bring with me, I brought ice water because it is super hot today. I brought a bunch of pots and containers, things that I already had on hand, and I made sure that they were large enough because I wasn't planning on really dividing plants down to small pieces because, time is of the essence. I figured out my pieces that I was going to dig up were going to be on the bigger side, so I wanted to use bigger pots. I brought a large shovel because that makes it a lot easier when it comes to shoveling, but I also did bring my small hand shovel as well as my hand pruners and a small hand saw in case I needed to cut anything while I was digging. I brought a couple of buckets of dirt because honestly, if I'm going to be digging up plants from someone else's property, the last thing I want to do is make a big mess. I don't want to make a big hole or indentation in the ground where I'm digging up plants. I'd rather remove as much of the soil from the plants as I'm digging them, and then I can backfill the plants in my own pots with my own soil. I brought a tarp to put down in the back of my car because I didn't want to get my car all messy. And if you don't have large pots like these, you can also use things like used cat litter boxes. I know it's silly, but I had a couple on hand. I also had some of those tubs that you might find at the dollar store, or if a family member has been in a hospital, a lot of times they have those small little wash basins or small plastic tubs. I have some of those on hand. I brought them too because sometimes you have a bigger plant that's not going to fit in one of these pots, which actually was the case of this grass right here. And so I was able to put that into my older cat litter box. So when I got there, I introduced myself to the property owner and she walked me around the yard. She explained which plants she was getting either rid of or that she wanted to be divided down. And she let me know, how big of a piece I was allowed to dig out if I was interested in those plants. And I also made sure I assured her that when I dig up a plant, I'm going to do it in the cleanest, neatest way possible. And also I was going to try to dig on a side where maybe it was encroaching next to a door or a walkway somewhere where it's going to clean up the plant and yet still look beautiful in her landscape. And in a few cases, the plants were hitting up next to her foundation of her house. So I would typically dig on that side just to kind of open up the plant so there was more airflow and so it looked a little bit neater and cleaner. And before I dug up any holes, I made sure to pull back the mulch. Even though the mulch was put down last year, I didn't want to make a mess. So I pulled back the mulch, I made my digs and pulled out the plants that I wanted to, but I made sure I took off as much soil as possible so that I wasn't making a big hole. I leveled everything and then I put the mulch back. And in some cases, like with the hosta, you can't help it. When you dig up hosta, some leaves are going to fall. You're going to break some leaves off. I didn't want to leave a bunch of hosta leaves in her lawn or in her flower bed. So I made sure to remove any litter that I was creating in her garden. And let me tell you what beautiful, wonderful gardens she had. She really maintained it so nicely. And again, it was so nice of her to share a piece of her garden with me. And each time I filled up 2 pots full of plants, I would just bring them to my car. I would backfill with a little bit of soil. I'm not filling the buckets all the way to the top, just enough to cover the roots, and then they would get put in my car. And she had quite a variety, and I was somewhat pressed for time, so I wanted to be selective with what I was getting. Now, you know I have a backyard plant nursery. I do sell plants, but I have to tell you, many of these plants are going to go in my own landscape, simply because they are beautiful. They're plants that I don't have, or if I do have, I don't have a lot of, and I want more of. And so most, if not all of these plants will be going into my own landscape, which is very exciting because they're just going to be projects that I'm going to work on in the near future. And on a later date, I absolutely will be coming in and dividing these plants down. For example, this grass is quite large. I just didn't want to divide it while I was there at her house. So on a different day, I'll tackle one plant, let's say the grass or maybe this hosta, and I'll divide them down into single pieces or into a couple of pieces, whatever I need. And I'm going to actually just pot them back up into smaller pots and water them well, put them somewhere in the shade. And you know I love to go shopping in my own yard. So then I will go shopping from these plants and place them in other areas of my yard. Most of the plants, when I was digging them out, were absolutely easy and very fine to dig out without causing too much of a problem with the look of her plant that I was leaving behind. The only one that, maybe didn't look as good in the end was the hosta, because it is basically the beginning of summer. And as you know, with hosta leaves, they're all opened up. They look beautiful and full. And no matter what you do, unless you're going to dig up that whole plant, which I wasn't going to do because I don't want to disturb her whole plant and then she has to keep watering it. So I basically had to cut it right, down, not the middle, but like maybe on the side of the hosta. And I let her know that. It's always good to have that open communication with the property owner. I let her know that once I make that cut, I'm still going to clean up around it, but it is not going to look as full and open as it did before I made the cut. And she was perfectly fine with that. And did I mention she even came out with a nice thing of cold water? What a sweetheart. She was just such a pleasure to be around and to talk with when it came to plants. So all of these plants have been given a nice, good, deep drink of water ever since I came home because I didn't water them at her house. And I'm going to be putting all of these in a shady area just so they can recover from the shock. I'll wait at least about a week before I start going in and dividing them down and potting them up. They just need to kind of relax for about a week now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over all the plants that are in here just so you get an idea of this great plant haul that I got today. I have one bucket of this Asiatic lily, and I love the color. It's a very pretty orange color. And you'll notice, just like all of us have in our gardens, there will be weeds in these buckets. I didn't want to be weeding the plants as I was digging them. I'll be doing that at a later date. But I do love this beautiful orange Asiatic lily. I have 7 pots of this beautiful Astilbe. I love the color. It's basically like a pinkish purple color. And you can see that's a pretty big piece. And I think once I divide it down, the plant is actually going to be happier and will throw out more blossoms in future years. But look how beautiful and lush the leaves are. I have 3 pots of this shorter variety of Shasta daisy. I love this. I don't have a ton of color in my yard right now. I have a lot of yellow, but I think this is going to look beautiful. And what I like about this particular Shasta daisy is that it's a shorter variety. The ones that I have in my yard are definitely taller varieties, so I have 3 pots of this particular Shasta daisy. Next up, there are 4 pots of this purple colored Liatris or gay feather. And I have a little bit of this in my yard, but I definitely wanted more. So I'm very happy to get 4 pots of this particular plant. As you know, I have a thing for Hosta, and I may already have this particular Hosta in my yard, but you can never have enough Hosta. And I just love this one because of not only the variation in color, but also the size of the leaves. Speaking of Hosta, look at the beautiful blue colored leaves. I have 4 pots of this color Hosta, and there are a lot of plants in this bucket. So I can make a ton of divisions off of this plant. Okay, so this grass is pretty big and heavy, and this is the one that I put in a cat litter box. So I'm just going to lift it from here, but you can see that it is a nice, healthy specimen of a plant, and I can definitely divide and turn this into many plants. And the property owner did tell me that it's a little bit of an aggressive plant. It does like to creep and crawl, and I'm so glad she shared that with me. So I'll keep that in mind as I research this plant and see the best place or places in my landscape. So remember, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, there are a bunch of places where you can shop for gardening type items, including plants. You can get them for a really low cost, sometimes even free. So definitely be on the lookout for that. There are always people out there that have beautiful gardens, and maybe it's just too much work for them to divide down their plants. So it's definitely worth putting yourself out there if you want to basically score plants like I did today. I really hope this video inspired you. I can't wait to divide and get these plants out in my landscape. And I'll definitely give you updates in the future on where these plants are going to go. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or any comments, please drop them down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.